Do you ever feel like life is rewiring the circuit board of your soul? You can attribute that to the aspects to your natal chart. Your aspects are the drama on the stage of life of those characters that we've talked about in your birth chart, all their different psychological drives, all their different goals, where they're located in your chart. They are the ones there creating this drama in your life along with you as a willing participant, because these are your outlooks, to help you grow. Today we're going to talk about the 6 aspects that cause us the greatest headaches and how to work with them. We've all heard of the trilogy in your chart: the sun, the moon, and the ascendant. The sun is kind of like the path along the way, right? The path that you're following. And the moon is kind of like the tone of that path, the shade of it, the feel that you get from it. And then the worldview, or the ascendant, the worldview, is what you pick up, what you notice. It's different than what other people will notice. Well, the aspects also play a critical role there. You have the aspects in your natal chart, those conversations that happen between the different planets and their placement in your chart that create the battles that you're going to have in life, but it also contains the victories, and it contains gifts and things that you find easy to do. But we learn more from our challenges than we do our victories. By design, the universe has given you aspects between certain planets to help you in your soul's evolution. So let's take a look at America's chart to show you how the aspects work. So here we have America's natal chart. These are the aspects. We, as a collective people, are in the middle of that chart working through these aspects, and they shape our worldview over here, Sagittarius. Now, when you add the transits, these are characters going around our stage, our natal chart, creating conversations with our planets and our natal transits here. So when planets reach this spot over here, we tend to hear things. They tend to get loud. We see things happen. And if we put this in motion, you can see that some planets move faster and some move slower. But while we're here, I want to show you something about America's chart and where the transits are right now. Look at Pluto down here in the second house. We had our Pluto return back in 2022 in America's Declaration of Independence chart. But in this chart now, Pluto has moved on. It's now on our south node. To note, yesterday was the Supreme Court ruling on the Voting Rights Act. And we'll look at more of these charts after to show you how the transits affect America's natal aspects. But look where Pluto's headed next. So Pluto in Aquarius is moving toward America's moon. And that's going to happen in 2041, 2042, 2043, in that time frame. What you won't hear from me here is any of the drama talk of, oh my God, this is happening. It's never happened before, and we're all going to freak out. That's not my mode. So let's move on to the next topic. One of the goals in life, there are many, is to integrate these aspects. That's why you got them. They are helping you on your soul's path. So you got these certain aspects to work out. But again, using the stage analogy, you have these characters on your stage, these different psychological drives. Some are close to you, some are behind the curtain, the universal planets behind the curtain. And they're all carrying different scripts. Well, those scripts and where they're located on the stage play a key role in what forms an aspect. You're in control of the story and how you interpret these aspects, and that struggle gets you closer to your sun. So what are these 6 aspects? Let's take a look. The first aspect is the conjunction. These are 2 planets sitting right on top of each other, and they form a superpower. If you get it by transit, a conjunction, you're starting a new chapter. The sextile is when 2 planets are 60 degrees apart. They're kind of familiar with each other. It's something that comes easy to you. The square is when 2 planets are feeling pushed into a corner by each other. The trine is when 2 planets are 120 degrees apart. So they're kind of similar with each other. They feel a commonality between them. and they can work well together, or they can overdo it as well. The in conjunction is like a teeter-totter, and it's hard to keep the balance because these two are just on different wavelengths. And finally, the opposition is when two planets are across the stage from each other. They can't understand each other. They have to yell, and they have different agendas. Mind you, when you get an aspect, there's a thing called orb. It's how close is the conversation happening. If it's 0 degrees, if those two planets are right on top of each other, even by aspect, then it's a really clear conversation. You can hear the argument or the agreement well. If it is more than, say, 6 degrees apart, it gets a little bit harder to hear, except for when the sun and the moon are involved. When those two are involved, you give an orb of about 10 degrees because those are such important pieces in your chart. Additionally, by transit, when a planet comes into a sign where you have a planet in your chart, you can feel the disruption because it's going from one script to another, and it's starting to talk to you personally. The closer it gets to your planet, sometimes the louder that conversation feels. When it first gets in the sign, depending on the location of the planet in that house, you might just get little whispers, little inklings. But by the time that planet gets close to yours, in your natal chart, you hear it much more clearly, and you kind of get the gist of the changes that it wants you to make. If the planet is a slow-moving planet, like Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, or Pluto, it's going to sit there a while, and it goes deeper. The lessons go deeper. So by transit, you have to pay attention to that. Now, there's one thing we need to talk about before we get into the aspects in America's chart and going through those, and that is the path of the sun. If you take the chart, the birth chart, and you follow the path of the sun, it reaches 4 critical points where things change. And that's important to have as a backdrop when you start talking about the aspects. The sun rises in the east and sets in the west. This is a critical point, going from darkness to light. This is called the ascendant. It is your worldview. This is where the sun sets before it goes into its darkest point, midnight. Planets on top of the chart tend to be experiential learners. Planets at the bottom of the chart tend to be theoretical learners. Planets at the top of the chart are asked to participate in humanity's systems in a different way than those planets at the bottom of the chart. Now, by transit, you will always experience that top of the chart and the bottom of the chart. But the gist of the soul, if it has a lot of planets at the top of the chart, is to push the buttons of life, to understand how it works. You do the same at the bottom part of the chart. It's a very subtle suggestion, but there's just a draw to engage in things like travel, or to have a prominent career, or to belong to large groups, or to test, risking your values, or to get what you want, and to do that exchange, that idea of trusting others. So planets at the top of the chart tend to do that more. Planets below the horizon, again, it's not an inactive space. You do a lot of work there, but the invitation is to observe and to assimilate, and then you do stuff with that information. Again, this isn't stuff you feel strongly. It's not like how you feel Mars strongly in your chart or how you feel the moon in the chart, but it helps you understand the aspects. Next, we're going to divide the chart in half again. This time it's called the meridian, or the latitude, dividing North Pole to South Pole. This point represents noon, the sun's highest point. This point down here represents midnight, the sun's lowest point. Planets on this side of the chart are kind of like very willful, and they are pushing their way up. They're understanding the will of rising. On this side of the chart, planets are understanding there are forces beyond theirs. So planets on the left side of the chart tend to be, I want to do it my way. I want to do it. I'm going to learn astrology on my own. Moon in the first house, conjunct Pluto. Sun over there in the 12th house as well, along with Mercury. So I want to teach myself. So it's not a willful thing like bullying other people, but it's understanding the power of the will. The sun is coming from midnight and it has to push its way up. It has to understand its strength. And then past that MC, or the pinnacle on how we are seen by the world, how we want to be seen by the world, it starts to fall. And it's starting to realize there are other ways to experience action in life. It doesn't have to be by us. And it's more helpful, right? And you think about the 7th house and how it wants to engage in understanding diplomatic power. It knows other forces, other people, the world, nature, animals, your spirituality, whatever, hold a force as well that it doesn't know. So now let's take a look at those aspects in America's chart. We're going to start first with the conjunction. The conjunction is when two planets are in the same sign. They're right next to each other. Really close conversation. So they have the same goal. Usually you can have conjunctions outside of that, but we don't have that situation in America's chart. And in America's chart, it's Venus, our desires, what we value, and Jupiter, expand, the architect of our life. Add to that they are also very close to the sun, within 10 degrees. It's a pretty powerful superpower for America. In addition, Jupiter is the coach of our ascendant. So this drive in the 7th house to create these relationships, but with the goal of doing it in a Cancerian way, self-care or self-absorbed, emphasizes what America wants to teach in its ascendant. You can be a teacher or you can be, an evangelist. And sometimes with an evangelist, you might think, they get a little bit over the top. They think themselves above all that. A teacher usually is open and curious, recognizes where their strengths are, but also where they need to learn. Let's look at this conjunction and talk about it for a second. There are no lines when you have a conjunction because they're all sitting on top of each other. And here we have Venus, and here we have Jupiter, and here we have the sun. So you could say that we are here to demonstrate a belief in a vision. Equality, connecting in a fair and even way in diplomacy, connecting different cultures, that's where Jupiter is involved, a greater vision, creating fair and balanced partnerships. But these could at the same time be lessons of vulnerability and trusting of others. Remember, Cancer is a water sign. It's focusing on itself. It's at the bottom of the chart when we looked at the lineup in the last video. And what is the cost for standing up in our beliefs and lying for the sake of acceptance? Looking at the dynamics in the chart, if you look at the planetary direction, it gives you even more information. So there's this push toward the sun of Jupiter to expand and bringing its values right along with it. If you think about characters on a stage, that's going to get pretty loud. And that's how America wants to be seen as well. Your midheaven is how you want to be seen by others too. But there's this pride associated with the sun. You want to be seen as that. You are not that yet. You are aspiring to be that. But you want to be seen as that. So you kind of use those other planets and sometimes other aspects to help be seen by that. But sometimes, it's like you're a 2-year-old wanting to be seen as a scientist. You're just using the play set, right? You don't really have all that scientific knowledge yet. That's the purpose of life, to give you that knowledge. And if you choose to go to school, to get a PhD, then you're qualified by the world standards. Next, let's take a look at the sextile. America has a couple of sextiles in its chart. We're going to focus on one of them, and that is the one between Mercury and Neptune. Mercury, our perception, our style of curiosity, how we link things together, how we see things, is in Cancer. Cancer is the idea of self-care or self-absorbed. But that Mercury is in a water house. So a water sign in a water house might lean toward being self-absorbed in that way. Sextile to it about 60 degrees apart, is Neptune in the ninth house. It's in Virgo. Neptune is the Imagineer. See things beyond what you can conceive. It's in Virgo. It's an earth sign. So that conception might be kind of practical, right? It's not going to be all, loose and stuff like that. Neptune is being asked to refine its vision. And if you think about the house that it's in, that fire house, well, Neptune in a fiery space is going to have a lot of ideas to get things going, to want to spread, right? But the invitation in Virgo to take on that script is to do some refining before you go off and jump the gun. But with Neptune and Mercury together, Mercury is that creative part of us, right? Well, they have that in common with Neptune. So you can see a little bit of the rub there. I mean, it's easy for America. Hold on a second, let me bring up the chart. Here's the sextile I'm talking about here. Mercury at 24 degrees, Neptune at 22 degrees. It's a pretty close aspect. So this sextile can be given to us to strengthen our intuitive thinking. We could create detailed plans with Mercury helping Neptune in its wonderful ideas, but it can also be an impatience for and delusions of the truth, of laws and justice, because you're talking about the ninth house, and that is also associated with Sagittarius and the teacher or the evangelist. There are laws, there are rules there that we have to follow, and we are trying to understand those in greater depth, but we could be deceived also by others' needs in the name of our own safety. So we could be accepting allegiance without doing our due diligence. So sextiles can work well together. You don't feel them as much. It's a natural ability. I have Mercury and Mars sextile. I get shit done. I have an idea, I go do it. I am constantly multitasking. I can also get distracted from important goals. Next, let's talk about the square. America has two squares in its chart. Both are pretty tight. The one I'm going to talk about mostly is the one between the Sun and Saturn. The Sun is over there in the seventh house with its desire to create connections that are feeling, that make people feel safe, that are sensitive to how others feel, that respect how others feel. It wants to be seen as a caretaker as well. But over in the 10th house, we have Saturn, obstacles. Your aspirations are constantly met by obstacles. You are backed into a corner. But they are both cardinal. They both want to test the power of each. And here you have the Sun over in its 7th house wanting to do its diplomatic power thing, to be seen as that. And there's Saturn up in the 10th house saying, you're not working hard enough. You're not thinking through what's at risk between making agreements between this person and yourself. You have to be very mindful of that. You have to understand the work involved in creating just, fair, and balanced relationships, whether that is with a Supreme Court that is within, the scope of our wheel, of our Declaration of Independence, or whether that is in relations outside of America. There's some tension there. The second square is between Mars and Neptune, two mutable signs. Mars is in Gemini. It wants to get shit done quickly. It thinks quickly. It wants to go, 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 go in the house of developing diplomatic relations. Then you have Neptune up in the 9th house, right? Mars is very attached to this world. Neptune is not. And it's up there refining in its firehouse, all these ideas. Mars is taking it off the conveyor belt before it's fully baked, and it's running off with it. So that's the dynamic of a square. Let's quickly take a peek at America's squares so we can see it in context. The square between the Sun and Saturn is at the top of the chart, how we want to be seen. Neptune is involved in the second square, also in the top of the chart, how we want to be seen. These planets are understanding powers beyond itself, but Saturn is over in that willful zone. Do it myself, do it my way. So with the Sun-Saturn square, we could be here to demonstrate a strength of determination in building trustworthy and powerful relationships. We want to appear stoic, but we could be here to learn, a stoic response to emotional risk or alienation doesn't work in creating those diplomatic relationships, right? And we have to learn when to speak up. The sun is learning to express itself, it's aspiring to do that, but Saturn is going to want to quiet that. It's an air sign, right? And it's going to be very cautious about what it says. Now, this Mars-Neptune contact over here, we could be here to demonstrate, clear and decisive rational thought and action. We want to be seen as strategic with a vision. But as I mentioned before, it can be rash action. You're not thinking through things. You're out there, trying to be the leader of the pack, to be seen as that sun, and you're not paying attention to the details. Gemini. Next, we're going to talk about the trine. America has a couple in its chart. We're going to focus on the one between Saturn and Uranus. Saturn is at the top of the chart on the world stage. Saturn is your obstacles in life. It's what you constantly have to overcome. You will never stop doing that Saturnine work. You will always encounter obstacles there. The idea is it's helping you reach your sun. So we get a lot of challenges to that area, right? But Uranus, in the bottom sector of this chart, it's, theoretical learning, but it's a universal planet. It's behind the stage curtains. It's not part of our daily makeup of how we think. It's there in Gemini, saying, what are the possibilities? Uranus is the awakener. Let's take a look at it on the chart. Saturn and Uranus. We could be here to demonstrate a determination to adjust to unpredictable challenges, with Saturn up there in the 10th house. And Uranus is unpredictable stuff. So there's strength that comes to this sun by doing that work, by taking whatever comes at it. Unpredictable stuff. You have to think on your feet. Gemini is really good at that. There are no sacred cows. Truth at any cost and respected for it. But we can also be here to experience the obstacles in right timing for bold moves and understanding when to let go of tradition. Saturn loves tradition. It loves keeping things the same so it doesn't have any more obstacles. Saturn is there, regardless of what sign it's in, to feel secure there. So it fills you with insecurity and doubt, because those are those self-created obstacles, right? The drama that we're creating, from my own experience right now, the operator boards, they would pull things out, plug things in. I'm getting rewired. Don't know about you, but I certainly am. And that's my Saturn at work. I have Pluto headed to my Saturn. Sun opposition. Did I mention there's going to be a full eclipse on my sun in 2027 as well? I'm getting some Saturnine lessons, and I just finished my Saturn return. I feel like I've been in a Saturn masterclass. Let's go on to the in conjunction. We have Jupiter up there in the 7th house, hanging out, having fun, totally optimistic. If Venus right next to it, our values, and the sun shining on it within its beams. Life looks great. We are great diplomatic powers, right? Down at the bottom part of the chart, theoretical learning, is the South Node. Now, the South Node doesn't carry any planetary power with it. It's just a suggestion to let go of these habits that you have, these memories that create these unconscious behaviors, so you can reach that North Node. The South Node and the North Node are always directly opposed to each other. It's an opposition, so there's always this push-pull dynamic to it. Our South Node is in Aquarius, corporation or the cult. What is our truth? And can it respect all the differences that there are in humanity and still assemble around this truth? It carries with it a similar weight, the South Node, like Pluto, and that it's doing shadow work. But Pluto is a planet that you feel. It doesn't have a natural opposition necessarily in your chart to work off of, to bounce off of. Again, the nodes are just a suggestion. But when you get eclipses on your nodes, or when your nodes get activated by planetary things, you do feel things depending on the aspect. So let's look at this in conjunction. It's the South Node down here in Aquarius, pretty darn close to Pluto. And we have Jupiter up here doing its beautiful dance with the Sun and Venus. We might be here to demonstrate in this conjunction the process of revealing humiliating secrets and doing that for full acceptance and to demonstrate that we can do this change and we can be better for it. But we could also be experiencing that there's no escape from others seeing your abuses of power. If you think about that South Node, corporation or the cult, the corporation doesn't abuse your personal power. It creates a space for everyone to come contribute in their way, regardless if they have blue eyes, if they are 5'2" versus 6'7", what they believe. It says, I don't care about that. What do you bring to the table, and can it contribute? And I'm going to give you a paycheck for it. The idea of corporation doesn't necessarily have money involved when I say corporation of the cult. Versus a cult is, we'll do the thinking for you. So there's an invitation to do that work with that connection to the South Node. And for Jupiter to constantly get that feedback from that South Node to expand its horizons, to be better, to do better. That's what Jupiter is about. But we have to be able to do better. You have to see where the pieces aren't working. That's also included in Jupiter. And this is what we were talking earlier in the video. Pluto is getting ready to talk to that South Node. It's there right now. It's within 2 degrees. You start to feel those conversations as they get close. And it's going to do a conjunction, and a conjunction is a new start. It's like the end of one chapter, the beginning of a new one. It doesn't mean all the problems are solved. It just means there are events that are happening that are going to create some kind of new vision to work with. And because of the transits, you've gotten other transits along the way to help you grow. Again, we just had our Pluto return in the Declaration of Independence back in 2022. And we'll look at that at the end of the video. Next, let's talk about the final aspect, and that is the opposition. So speaking of Pluto, here it comes in the form of an opposition with Mercury in America's chart. Pluto is in Capricorn. It is lead with the heart or lead with the wallet. And it's in the second house. It's a fixed house. Capricorn is an earth sign. It's in a fixed house. Pluto wants to purge all that. Those two energies don't necessarily get along. When you're fixed, you want to stay that way. But here's Pluto actively seeking to purge. South Node doesn't actively seek to do that. It's just a suggestion. But Pluto is in there with some might, eating its spinach, all that good stuff, saying, no, we're going to purge this unconscious stuff. It's sitting behind the stage, and it's going to lock things through the curtain that you are going to have to deal with in the skit, the story, the tale of your life. Now, you have Mercury on the other side over in the 8th house. It's in Cancer, it's water, it's receptive, it wants to hold, it doesn't really want to take risks. It's in the 8th house of fixed water. It's really concerned about risk, what's at risk, because it wants to hold on to that water. And it's getting all those experiences that are a fixed water kind of experience, which is you have to trust, that quadrant, that there are forces beyond you at play. But what do you trust? It's water. And what am I willing to let go of? And you get experiences that really question, do you trust things? One, but that question, how much of a hold do you really have on the stuff that you need? But the idea of the 8th house and with Mercury there is it thinks a lot about the idea of risk and what it wants to hold on to. And there you have Pluto at the other side of the chart locking things through the curtain saying, nope, you got to get rid of this, you got to get rid of this. And Mercury is going to try to think around that, to avoid it, to be quick, even if it's not in Gemini, which is, quick thinking. And Mercury is Gemini's coach. It's also Virgo's coach. Mercury is going to try to find ways around it. That's the nature of that opposition. So let's take a look at it. So here we have Pluto, very close to the South Node. They carry a lot of themes in common, and it is opposite Mercury up here in the 8th house. We could be here to demonstrate the process of revealing humiliating secrets for full acceptance and change, just like that. But we are quick thinkers here. But this quick mind cannot escape or control others from seeing the abuses of power down here. Pluto in Capricorn, and it costs more to hide from your fears than to face them. Capricorn, especially with Pluto in Capricorn, right? It suggests that in our chart, and if you think about where America came from, number one, stealing the land from the Native Americans and how that all went down. Thank you, Heather Cox Richardson, for being such a great teacher. Sorry, sidebar. Anyway, and you think about the people who came to America and the abuses of power that they were feeling. You can kind of get the gist when we're thinking about the formation of America. I thought it would be interesting to look at 3 charts to show how the transiting aspects trigger America's chart and America's natal aspects. I chose to look at the slow-moving planets to emphasize those, but I'll quickly point out other planets in there as well. The divine timing of this stuff always amazes me. You can look at a particular aspect and you can suspect the type of things that are going to happen. To predict it down to the nth detail for the sake of feeling secure and safe in this world isn't my role or my purpose in doing astrology. I think, we're here to learn, and if we can't deal with the surprises in life, then we stop learning. And to try to predict things down to the nth degree, I don't know, just a waste of time. Anyway, this is the first time that America had Pluto on the ascendant. So let's take a look at the chart. Here we have transiting Pluto on America's natal ascendant. Our worldview changed on September 11th. Many theories about what really went down, but what we experienced as a nation, most of us, was a change in worldview that had never happened before in America. What's also interesting to note is Saturn is in that 7th house. Additionally, we have the moon and the north node connected right on our Venus-Jupiter lineup. And we have Jupiter applying to a conjunction with our sun. That happens every 12 years. But that it would happen at this time is just, to me, the beauty of astrology and helping me gain insight into things that I might not get otherwise. Additionally, we have Neptune down here on our south node. That doesn't happen every year. It's every 148 years or so. And then we also have Mars and the south node opposing that same lineup over here. So these are some of the fascinating things that you can draw from a chart. Let's take a look at the next one, which is for 2011. In 2011, transiting Pluto had now moved into Capricorn. It is lead with the heart or lead with the wallet. It was still in the 1st house, which is, yes, our worldview, but more so understanding our personal power. It's a fire house associated with Aries. Pluto was opposing that super conjunction, that superpower that we have in the 7th house. Let's take a look. Here we have transiting Pluto at 4 degrees, talking to this big old conjunction right over here, our superpowers, asking us to look at, are we leading with the heart or the wallet? Asking us, is it self-care or are we self-absorbed in how we are negotiating not just with others, but the people? This is the chart for a country. In 2011, Osama bin Laden was killed and the Iraq War ended. There was a lot of controversy about that war and how it started and why it started, and questions about 9/11. Our outlook on our country had changed. We had also, in 2011, repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell. People said no. Our systems said no. So America was learning, even within that seventh house, of maybe looking out to create relationships with others to make itself stronger and safer in this world, that it needed to look at the inside as well. We've had other transits to this house. We get them often. The slow-moving planets, especially in an opposition, are having a standoff, not just because it's a slow-moving planet, but Pluto is there for a while, and it's going to dig deep. It's going to purge some things. It's going to bring some things up so we can deal with it. In that same year, we had Occupy Wall Street. Lead with the heart, lead with the wallet, Pluto. We could see the abuses of these corporations. We were starting to see it. We're going to get to that again in our chart in the coming years. I think especially when Pluto hits our natal moon, I think we'll see that in the 2040s to 2043 or so. Pluto's going to go back and forth over that moon and make sure we got the message. It's up to us to deal with the stuff. So here's that opposition. And this happens to be the day, September 17th, that Occupy Wall Street started. I kind of look at the momentum of Occupy Wall Street coming up with this Saturn return that we were getting right here. And then also, I'm looking at Neptune on the moon. Neptune is saying to the people, corporation or the cult, release, something's not right here, imagine something more. On to the final chart. In 2022, America had its first Pluto return, our Declaration of Independence, stating our freedom from rulership. It's in Capricorn, lead with the heart or lead with the wallet. This was an invitation because Pluto had squared our natal Pluto. It had opposed it, but it had never met up with it to have a heart-to-heart again, transiting Pluto, that is. So this was the year that America was going to feel that pressure, back and forth over its natal Pluto to say, are you leading with the heart or are you leading with the wallet? In 2022, recent memory, it was COVID time. COVID, and I found this so interesting in researching what was going on in 2022, had just been declared a pandemic then. You would have thought 2021 would have been the time. No. More deaths, billions of deaths over, the world. We had the vaccine, but we didn't have a handle on it because we couldn't get it together as a nation to say mask or don't mask, right? That was just one of the contributors. There were other things as well. But that was a big controversy. Some people felt it was taking away from their freedom to express themselves how they wanted to. They didn't have to wear a mask. That was infringing upon their personal rights. Others, myself included, felt like, hey, let me wear a mask. I don't want to infect anyone. God knows if someone has cancer or something, even if I don't have COVID, if I have something else, let me be mindful to that. On the other hand, Ketanji Brown Jackson was appointed to the Supreme Court. We had the Paris Climate Agreement then as well, but we also had the Roe versus Wade leak and the eventual overturning. And that's the chart I've put together. So here we have transiting Pluto on our natal Pluto. And actually, Pluto was retrograde when this happened with the ruling. This is the date of the ruling, June 25th, 2022. Here we have the Sun on Jupiter and Venus. Now, this is going to happen every year. And the difference is, so our Sun rules. It's the coach of our ninth house. Rules, laws, the gist of a Supreme Court. What's fair, what's not, judgment, teacher or the evangelist. It all kind of links into that. And I'll get into the houses in a future video. But it didn't happen. And other legal things may happen in that kind of a lineup. If you were to look at the Sun conjunct our superpower there in the seventh house, maybe we could find themes of certain things that are happening in America. regarding its judgments, its legal systems. Could be an interesting study. But this one, which took away the rights of women to their body, and we know the downstream effects of that now, sitting here in 2026, happened when Pluto was retrograde, reconsidering, reevaluating. Maybe it wasn't a forward movement, it wasn't a progressive movement, right? It happened when Pluto was retrograde. The aspects are another beautiful part of this symbolic language to help us understand what's going on inside ourselves and to make sense of what's going on in the world around us. I often go down deep rabbit holes in studying astrology because I love the language, but I always wanted to develop a source for people who were interested to learn it in a different way. And I have simplified it, yes, and maybe astrologers who have been in it for 50 years would say, hey, wait a minute, you're missing this and that. It's not my interest. I want to make this accessible to people to understand the language. And then choose your rabbit hole. I mean, go exploring. It's fascinating. Thank you for joining me. If you have any questions, pop them down below. I love looking at charts. And the next time, I think I'm going to talk about the houses, but I have a back porch redo to get out as well. So anyway, for the one or two of you who have made it to the end, thank you. And we'll see you next time.